What we as an audience expect from superhero physiques has evolved massively over time. Ben Affleck is actually the best example of this. Affleck's first superhero role was Daredevil back in 2003, and he looked like I could beat him up for his lunch money. Please do not beat anyone up for their lunch money. But when Affleck had to do Batman, he was so massive, he looked like he could...
It pops me like some nightmarish blood balloon.
Now, bookending both of Affleck's performances is actually Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, from X1 in 1999 to Deadpool and Wolverine in 2024. And Deadpool and Wolverine caused a massive shift in our expectations about superhero physiques. See, when the first photos of Deadpool and Wolverine came out, there was this huge controversy and speculation over whether Hugh Jackman's arms were real or not. Channels like the Corridor Crew theorized that they were completely CGI or partially enhanced in some way. And when audiences first saw a shirtless scene, we speculated how much of it was real and how much of it was CGI or enhanced by CGI. And despite all the bickering on both sides of is it or isn't it, after watching Paul vs. Tyson, I have an even more controversial take on Hugh Jackman's physique. But first, I'm going to explore how we even got to this point, and that means talking about all the shirtlessness in the MCU. Not only will it help me make my point, but we get to look at a whole bunch of very good looking people wearing not a lot of clothing. For science. This job is really tough sometimes. One like equals one prayer for me. Welcome to the panel where we look at the world through the frame of the comic book. My name is Jason Bedell. I'm a professional comic book artist and writer, but I also worked on all three Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, as well as the Wolverine and Logan. Wait, let me just show you all the movies, TV shows, video games, and of course comic books that I've worked on. Just quickly, the newest thing that I've done is the art for these wicked action figures. When you see these at Target, you can be like, I know the guy that painted those. But enough about me. Let's get down and dirty. The MCU has remained remarkably modest in their depiction of women. We got some of Leslie Bibb's legs after our only sex scene, then maybe fast forward around 30 movies later to the Marvels for this much of Brie Larson's midriff. And we're gonna go to the TV shows for a flash of She-Hulk's CGI legs. Of all people, I think Gwyneth Paltrow shows the most skin in Iron Man 3. But The Gentleman, now that is a totally different story. In a series of over 30 movies embraced by hetero dudes everywhere, have you noticed that the MCU has more male nudity than the first 15 minutes of a Chippendale show? I mean, I wouldn't know firsthand. A friend told me. Anyway, moving on. I don't mean to make it weirder, but I want to go through the list. Everyone who finds very fit men attractive is grabbing their popcorn right now, while myself and the other hetero dudes in the audience are squirming a little uncomfortably. But my point is, we caused this. You should gaze upon what you have wrought. Now, first cab off the rank, would you believe is Edward Norton in The Incredible Hulk? And no, I'm not counting the Hulk himself. After that, my very own Marvel Jesus, Scott Stuart, and I have always joked that it was Chris Hemsworth and Thor who encouraged our wives to join us for the rewatches of that movie. Following up was Chris Evans and his two best supporting actors, Pectus and Abdominus, Breaking Bad for Captain America. That awesome moment where Haley Atwell first sees him is apparently not planned, and I can't blame her. Even as a hetero guy, I think it's getting a little hot in here. The shirtless precedent had been so established that Chris Pratt got so infamously jacked that he managed to launch an entire action career. Unfortunately, I can't comment on all of it as I need to somehow stay awake during the Jurassic World movies. But to further prove that we are in the bizarrest part of the multiverse of all time, Paul Rudd got himself to the point where he somehow ended up on the cover of Men's Fitness. Hell, even neurosurgeons in the Marvel Universe are jacked. Benedict Cumberbatch brought it for both of Doctor Strange's movies. And even teenage characters like Peter Parker are stripping down again and again. I'm not being gratuitous, you're being gratuitous. Remember to hit that like button. Meanwhile, Shang-Chi leans into the Bruce Lee tradition of shirtless, hard-flexing martial arts movies. Of note, the other three biggest Asian martial arts movie stars, Jackie Chan, Jet Li, and Donnie Yen, very rarely get their shirts off in their movies. Meanwhile, Chadwick Boseman in Black Panther not only became a cultural symbol for empowerment, but also motivated almost every red-blooded person who is attracted to men. Hey, what do you call someone who's attracted to men? Let me Google it. An androsexual. And what, attracted to women? A gynosexual. I don't think either of those words describe what's happening here. I am going to make up a word. Let's see. Chris Hemsworth, Chris Evans, Chris Pratt. I got it. If you're attracted to male bodies as depicted in an MCU movie, you are now a Chris-sexual, because the Chris's are absolutely defining and continuing this trend. But for me, the male body in the MCU is similar to the depiction of the male body in pro wrestling. While I acknowledge the attractiveness of very fit male bodies to Chris-sexuals, it's a secondary intention, because for me, the main intention is the communication of extraordinary, superhuman power. While myself and every other professional comic book artist has been drawing superheroes with this body type for nearly a century now, I think seeing it for real took levels of body dysmorphia to whole new heights. But while the Chris's popularized the superhero physique trend, they didn't actually start it. To point that finger, we're going to come full circle, and I believe that this whole male power attractiveness joyride fantasy began with Hugh Jackman. Hugh Jackman's escalating physique journey pretty much set the expectations for us, the audience, and every other superhero that wanted to get on the silver screen. Jackman debuts in X1 looking pretty healthy, but back then, anyone who made a comment about his physique was sort of laughed off. No one actually expected him to look like a superhero. What are you, crazy? And then, for X2, Jackman stepped up. Maybe it was his initial insecurity about losing the role of Wolverine. Maybe because he was 6'2" and he felt he had to overcompensate to resemble the 5'3" tanky comic book character. Perhaps his fitness regime exploded out of a Chris Prattian desire to become a believable action hero. But in 2013, the MCU's Chris has been chugging along for 4 or 5 years now. So in the Wolverine, for these shots that I actually helped got to create the idea boards for, Jackman steps up again, and he raises the bar even higher by going 36 hours without water for each and every shirtless scene. And by Marvel's Phase 2 in 2014, Hugh puts out Days of Future Past. His physique was so over the top that he pretty much stared down every other superhero at the table. He raised the bar for all of them and for us. And then in Logan, Jackman embraces James Mangold's obsession with the semi-naked Wolverine in a bathroom, so he gets even more ripped, escalating from going 36 hours without water to 48 hours to get the level of ripped that he wanted. On Scott's and my road to Deadpool and Wolverine, we watched every good Wolverine movie, and we joked about starting a drinking game for every time that Jackman gets his shirt off. Do not do this. First, I ask you to please drink responsibly, and second, you will probably die. And now, we come back to where we started with Deadpool and Wolverine and the controversy of CGI arms and Hugh's physiques. Firstly, specifically selected shots and lighting are 70% of what we see on screen. We all have at least one angle in the mirror where we think we look pretty damn good. You know what I'm talking about. Now imagine having a team of people whose job is to find your best angles and make them look absolutely awesome. And second, the more you work out, the more good angles you have. Now, I was a personal trainer for over 20 years. I ran 2 personal training studios. Do you know how hard it is to get into this sort of shape? Jackman is force-feeding himself thousands of calories every day, which one of the buff dudes in this video failed to do for even one day. And you're thinking, well, my dude, all you need is some steroids. Now, I have a controversial take on Jackman's steroid accusations. While Hugh Jackman, like Alan Richardson, may be taking testosterone replacement therapy, I don't think he's actually taking steroids. Why? I just don't think he's that big. He's ripped to hell, but he's not that massive. Compare his physique to other guys of his age on steroids, and you can see Jackman lacks the sheer mass. Especially in these behind-the-scene photos, he's nowhere near as big as they want you to think he is. Look at this scene from the Wolverine where he runs towards us. He looks massive. Now look at this behind-the-scenes footage where he's running also. He's big, but he's not that big. Have a look at this profile shot from Days of Future Past. That's not someone who's ridiculously massive. Now look at bodybuilder Jesse James West. He's younger than Jackman, but he's a natural bodybuilder. And he's a bunch of natural bodybuilders also over 50. If Jackman's on steroids, he's on the worst steroids ever. But here's the thing, for myself, a guy approaching Jackman's age, I'm reasonably fit, but I've only been working out for like 8 months. But I know that I work out about half as intensely as Jackman for half as long for only 4 to 6 days a week. He's got trainers and a personal chef. When I look at all that and how hard he works compared to me, I see a reasonable achievable gap in his and my results. He also has much nicer lighting. At the end of the day, when I look at Jackman, I just think that this is what 26 years of bodybuilding with fantastic trainers and extraordinary discipline looks like. Let me say that again. Extraordinary discipline, because that is 90% of the battle. Day in and day out, working to look this good for us. And then the photos for Deadpool and Wolverine come out, and despite all of Jackman's incredible work, we all look and wonder if it's CGI. On one hand, you can say, look mate, I don't care if you think it's CGI or not, I'm doing the work. But he does all that work knowing that we are doubting every rep and every set, and every second of what we see on screen. I still watch Deadpool and Wolverine, and this fantastic movie is tainted for me because I'm always staring at Jackman's arms, wondering if they're real. Mike Tyson in his fight the other day with Jake Paul was 58 years old, and that was a stark slap in the face of how age affects an athlete. And on a subconscious level, we all knew age would be a factor. We just didn't know how much of it would be a factor. Hugh Jackman was 56 in Deadpool and Wolverine. He was 2 years younger than Tyson was in his fight, and we can expect the next Deadpool and Wolverine to be well over 2 years away, making Jackman older than Tyson in the fight. Jackman has been doing the huge Jackman thing for 26 years now. He's raised the bar about as high as I believe a 56-year-old man who isn't a professional athlete should safely raise it. One day, we're going to stop getting a Hugh Jackman Wolverine performance because he can't bring himself to go through the fitness hell that he needs to do in order to deliver us the Wolverine that we want. And worse, what if he does go through that fitness hell and he doesn't look anywhere near as good as he wants? And either option sucks. It is one thing pushing yourself to these extraordinary heights, but going 36 to 48 hours without water to be lean enough to get on screen is seriously dangerous. And if you believe that Hugh Jackman is on steroids, then that ups the reason for him not to do this even more. Hugh Jackman cannot feasibly keep being Wolverine like this. It's not worth it for him. It's not worth it for us. So I want to propose a mutual agreement for Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. Let us put all of our fitness demands for Wolverine in the trash. Let's do it. Let's just all agree to just CGI everything. Jackman can then concentrate on every other part of the Wolverine performance. We keep getting a Hugh Jackman Wolverine for at least another 10 years. Meanwhile, we, the audience, can marvel at his muscle suits and the CGI, and he gets to eat a goddamn cheeseburger. And before you think this is revolutionary, it is not like this is new territory for an MCU hero. Marvel has a male superhero lead who has never taken his shirt off for the power fantasy at all. It's a little guy at the bottom of the MCU totem pole that no one's ever heard of.
I am Iron Man.
Robert Downey Jr. gets his shirt off once in Iron Man 1 during the self-surgery scene with Pepper Potts, but if you don't see the difference in tone between the body horror of that scene and Chris Evans being revealed in Captain America, then maybe I should do a video about tone one day. And speaking of CGI and effects, that's not even Downey Jr.'s real body. Check out these behind-the-scenes photos. Funnily enough, it's ironic that I'm asking for amnesty for the guy that started this whole superhero body dysmorphia trend, but I think Jackman's been in superhero fitness jail for long enough. Let's let Jackman off the hook and put him in the Iron Man camp of tank tops and special effects. If the choice is Jackman hanging up the claws and casting a new Wolverine, or having him return again and again as our favorite
Thirsty little honey badger.
by getting a CGI makeover, I'll take the latter. I want to enjoy
The best Wolverine.
today, tomorrow, and
Till you're 90.
as for the rest of you MCU superheroes, get to the goddamn gym. We'll talk about you in 26 years. But wait, we are far from done. If you are interested in Deadpool and Wolverine, Scott and I have a final chat about it. You know who else wants to keep doing this until he's 90? Me! If you want to wax lyrical about all things superheroic, Marvel or not, then join me by hitting that subscribe button. If you want to hit that notification bell, a bit like me hitting the bat signal for you to turn up whenever it's time to fight crime together. If you happen to be a Chris sexual or enjoy my armchair superhero hijinks, please hit that like button. But if you want to see the best thing I've ever drawn, you can check out my Bram Stoker Award nominated graphic novel, Joker Harley Criminal Sanity. But be forewarned, the only nude bodies are the forensically accurate, meticulously drawn corpses that the Joker leaves behind for Dr. Harley Quinn and Detective Gordon to find. Please try and grab it from your local comic book store, but it's also got some great reviews on Amazon.com. I'm also drawing my free comic, The Last Sun, every week on Twitch. Head to twitch.tv/Jason Badow for my schedule there. You can read the full free comic at jasonbadow.com. It's fully optimized to read on your screen. It'll show you the first page and then zoom in for each section. If you want to get some digital sketches from me, head to patreon.com/Jason Badow. Scott, who owns every single issue of the Avengers and almost every single issue of Iron Man, and here's what we're going to talk about today. If we both still cannot stand Ryan Reynolds, I will also argue that Shawn Levy is one of the best Marvel Studios directors that we've seen in years, and why Bill Maher is a sad old man. Quick apology, the rest of the footage of me isn't in 4K because I deleted the file clearing my phone out to take pictures of my new Harley Quinn model for Joker Harley Volume 2. He's lovely, but he's not very bright. What you see is the camera that Scott sees, but the audio is all intact. So, for the last time, Deadpool and Wolverine, the final part.
Let's go.
I call it the Resistance, and that is Blade, Elektra, and X-23. What was your reaction when you saw that?
Joy. And after you've revealed Wesley Snipes coming back to play Blade in a movie with Ryan Reynolds, and you top that by bringing in Channing Tatum playing a character who never got realized before, the truest moment of fan service in the entire movie, because only the real fans could have had any idea about the Channing Tatum Gambit thing. Only people who were locked in on CBR and Ain't It Cool News back in the day are going to know what that's about until somebody explains it to them.
You had to either be at Hall H at San Diego that year or read coverage of it to even know what that reference was. It was absolutely the deepest cut of the movie. And I still love, I think the pacing of it was great. I apologize to Jennifer Garner that I do not have any emotions towards Daredevil. I still have not seen the director's cut that everyone raves about. I really want to go see the director's cut. If you've seen it, leave a comment below and I'll be motivated again to watch it. It's on my list.
Nobody raves about it. It's just better than the theatrical cut.
Sure. I did watch the High Top Films video. Have you watched that? Where he really goes very deep dive. I love that guy's passion. He seems in a very tough place right now, but he's did a great video on the Daredevil director's cut that I think you might enjoy. First, you have Elektra, and then you have Wesley Snipes, and then you have Gambit, and then you top it with X-23. I was very, very happy. I was in the cinema, and one of the things I love about seeing movies with American fans, just how vocal they are. You go see a movie with Australians, we're all very quiet throughout the majority of the film. When I went to see it live, people blew the roof off when Wesley Snipes turns up, and it was probably my favorite reveal, right up there with Johnny Storm.
One of those weird cultural things that I don't understand about America. To me, it's like arguing with the television.
I've only just had the insight that I think that Shawn Levy said something where he said there's nothing quite like sitting in a dark room and watching a movie with a whole bunch of other people. And I think that when American audiences are clapping at the end of the movie, they're also clapping for each other. Like, thank you, what a great experience this was. So they're not just clapping for the screen. I think they're literally just clapping for the experience and sharing that together. And that's a way of saying thank you to everybody who co-enjoyed the experience together. It's not something that I'm culturally ready for, but that's my interpretation. Continuity-wise, I thought it was interesting that their fight between them in the car, I'm not going to say the name of the car, was so egregious that he lost his sleeves. The fact that they stabbed each other for minimum 4 or 5 hours for the sun to set, and both of them do not be butt naked. Their clothes should be in shreds. The fact that he only lost his sleeves is another testament to this film wimping out at the R rating. You could have seen the thirsty little badger up front.
How smooth are his smooth criminals?
And let me tell you, he's got a nice pair of smooth criminals down under.
Then let's get to the Cassandra Nova base assault.
Once again, all these characters you never thought you'd see in action again, getting one last hurrah. After getting the scene where all the good guys are people you recognize, them having to bring in ringers and other talent to play established characters was a bit of a, moment. You were primed to get the pop, and then there's the Juggernaut, but it's not,
I'm the Juggernaut!
it's some rando. It's Psylocke, but you bought her from Wish. Good enough, don't get me wrong, but the first time it was like, that would have been good if they'd gotten Olivia Munn, if they'd gotten Vinnie Jones. But on every subsequent viewing, knowing there was no disappointment to be had, so it was just a fun romp of these characters having a last hurrah.
What I did love about this sequence is the fact that they had a plan. Paul uses his meta-knowledge of Magneto to know that his helmet would then make Cassandra Nova vulnerable. He then knows that Juggernaut's helmet is used to protect Juggernaut from the same sort of psychic assault. To then have a plan is exactly what I was talking about with the end of Days of Future Past. There was no plan for those people fighting out the front. Whereas this said, no, they've all got a goal. We are going to first get them into the building, then we're going to hold the building while we try and get the Juggernaut's helmet. And there was some sort of motivation for each one of them to not just look cool, but actually have a function for being there. And I thought that absolutely elevated it way over Days of Future Past for me. My favorite moments, Wolverine getting out of the car. I'm not going to say the model of the car again. You know what it is. Shaking as he gets out of it. The sunglasses reveal for X-23 was cheap and nonsensical, but so cool. I still loved it. Blade versus Azazel and his line, some MFers are still trying to ice skate uphill. It never made sense back then. Still doesn't make sense, but I love it. And Gambit. Just every frame of Gambit was freaking awesome for me.
Cool doesn't always make sense. Cool is a vibe. Cool is something you feel rather than you tick an intellectual box. Try as he might to be a dickhead in his actual life a lot of the time, Wesley Snipes will never not be cool. And if he commits to a line, that line is going to be cool. It doesn't have to make sense. It almost shouldn't.
On the first watch, when Cassandra Nova goes inside Wolverine's head and we realize that he's been trapping her to lure her into a position where Deadpool can actually make good on that. Again, great teamwork, character-based, and then you have the moment where Charles would not let me stand here and watch you die. And then that great line, if he knew you were here, he would have torn a hole in the freaking universe to bring you back. Then we see that she has a sling ring. And she goes, an amateur magician came by and I got this off him. I thought she was making a disparaging remark about Doctor Strange, but I think she's referring to Donnie Blaze from She-Hulk. What do you think?
I'm absolutely happy with that being a bit of headcanon. But the fact it's a sling ring with infinity gems built in makes me think that's probably not what they were going for.
Did it have infinity gems built into it?
It had the green and red stones on either side, which is how unlike most sling rings. So it jumps through realities and through times, which a normal sling ring can't, because it's got those infinity gems welded onto it. And yes, I find it hard to agree that we were meant to think about anybody but Stephen Strange in that. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fair enough. If it had 2 infinity gems attached to it, then yes, I absolutely take back my headcanon theory.
However, that shouldn't have done anything, because outside of their home universes, the Infinity Gems are paperweights. The TVA all have them as party favors in their desks. It shouldn't have had any effect in the wasteland. But I don't want to remember the great triumph and the joy of the leap through the portal. It was a great moment, and I'm sorry we think about things too hard.
Maybe Cassandra Nova's psychic powers were able to extend the range of the sling rings. I enjoyed the finale of this movie so much. Not easy to come up with what the audience wants. I think Marvel is very good at that because we've had, unfortunately, Fox roll out a whole bunch of movies that have rarely delivered what the audience actually wanted to see. And I feel like this movie was, how do we set it up in a way that you're actually going to really enjoy this?
The Deadpool core and the multiversal alliance of different Deadpools from different universes is a well-established thing. A number of these characters come from that.
You've got Nathan Fillion as Headpool, Matthew McConaughey as Cowboy Paul, Blake Lively as Lady Deadpool, which is when Ryan Reynolds was asked about that casting. He goes, it's quite funny because well before my wife and I got together, Rob Liefeld was asked, who would you cast as Lady Deadpool?
I imagine after watching an episode of Gossip Girl, if you were asked, who would you cast as female character X, your answer would only be Blake Lively.
There are 207 bones in the heterosexual male body when they watch Gossip Girl. Let's go to the meat of it. What did you think of the giant Deadpool Wolverine tracking dolly fight?
When you said go to the meat of it, I thought you meant Peter in the costume. Sorry. I've never been a huge comics Deadpool guy. I obviously read a fair bit, but not followed the character through many iterations. And the Deadpool core was something I was aware of, but not something I partook in. So I just took it as a tongue-in-cheek version of the old boy walking up the corridor scene.
If you've not seen that absolutely messed up Korean film, it is just brilliant. It is one of those earliest Korean films to go Western mainstream. I got to work on the Spike Lee remake with Josh Brolin, actually. I wrote and drew a tie-in comic book for that. That was very fun about Sam Jackson's character. I know this fight is designed for you to watch twice. Once you watch it for whoever you want to see first, and the second time for the other character. I cannot help but just watch Wolverine every goddamn time. I've seen Deadpool do fantastic antics and have incredible fights, but to see Wolverine in the goddamn yellow and blue suit massacre his way just brings me such joy every time.
Because it was so consequence-free. Because it was all these Deadpools who presumably can't be hurt. Even before we've established who can and can't be. We just assume they all can't be hurt. So there's no consequence, no guilt. It's just Wade Wilson over and over again. Haven't we all pictured slicing Ryan Reynolds from groin to throat at least once in our lives?
It's so funny because I have been very exhausted by Ryan Reynolds right up until this movie. And this is such a testament to his willpower, his drive, his people skills, the relationships that he's built. This is a monument to his career that he found a way to create Deadpool and his brand of humor in a way that I found so palatable. It was like watching a stand-up comic do their gig after gig, and you're just like, this album's the same as the last album, but then finally they hit their breakout. This is the first time I was not annoyed by Ryan Reynolds. Normally he just grates me. I feel really bad because the guy seems like a super nice dude and very clever and a great writer. This is the first time I was like, you found it. You thread the needle and you won me over. I think he's brilliant putting this thing together. Amazing work.
Ryan Reynolds' ability to trade on being Ryan Reynolds and getting cast to play Ryan Reynolds is both annoying but also admirable. How charismatic do you have to be as a person, as an actor, where they don't want you to play a character, they just want you to be you with the dial turned up. It's the sort of thing that really reminds me about pro wrestling, because pro wrestlers are the best when they tap into a character that is themselves turned up to 11. It gives the performance a grounding in reality that elevates the cartoonish elements and makes them more real and impactful for an audience. Brian has this natural skill to just ooze charisma. He's right up there with prime era Rock as somebody audiences like instinctively. And for him to find the role, for him to claw the role that he was born to play out of Hollywood indifference, out of genre inappropriateness, out of past movie ratings boards, and elevate it to this level is a testament to either the nicest, most genuine man who ever lived, or the most crafty supervillain level politician that can ever possibly exist. And either one is worthy of note and reflection and study. And yeah, I have no reason to think Ryan Reynolds isn't actually a very nice guy. Reasonable evidence suggests that he is those things. I'm glad it got to happen to somebody who loves the material.
Ryan Reynolds crafted this personality as a coping mechanism to deal with his social anxiety. When he could perform, he was fine, but when he was just being himself, he would really struggle. This is something that he puts on to the world to survive. That for all of us trying to get by, to watch a guy's coping mechanism become the thing that puts food on the table and then some, hats off to him. Just a quick interruption. If you are somehow still with us, thank you so much. If you would consider hitting that like button, that would just be amazing. Would really get the video to other people that might love the MCU also. If you want to consider hitting that subscribe button, let's do this again. All right, let's get back to the chat. Thank you so much. This movie isn't just a coming of age moment for Ryan Reynolds. I think it's a coming of age movie also for Shawn Levy as a director. The man has a plethora of movies in a whole bunch of different genres, and I consider them fine. This is the first one of his movies that I think he really rose to the occasion, brought everything he'd done in the past and leveraged it all for this one moment and knocked it out of the park. It is not an achievement that I think is up there with Endgame. Let's be real. I don't think it's an Avengers level, but as a directorial effort juggling all these balls, it is right up there in the top 5 for me of Marvel's directorial outings. In terms of difficulty, this was a difficult movie.
I agree with you that this is a step up for Levy. I think the guy's very skilled and capable. I'm not a student of his films or anything, but I've seen a few of them. I think he's fine. I think he's good. But I think he's a bit perfunctory, and not having obvious stylistic flourishes isn't always a bad thing in a director. But having none is a bit of a peg into the middle of the pack. He's had opportunities and budgets before, but this was a step up. I'd hang a tiny asterisk on it, only because everything we've heard about the Marvel production method infers that a lot of the action scenes are taken out of the hands of the director and put squarely in the visual effects department. The director's there to capture the characters and establish mood and tone. That's actually how most Hollywood films are made, where the second unit director is the guy actually putting the action together a lot of the time, and the director is handling the actors and the overall vision. I'd be very keen to see what Shawn Levy brought out next, and whether he carries over the verve and creativity that Reynolds and Jackman were able to bring out of him for this effort. I wish him nothing but the best, because this is a very entertaining film.
I think in the way that Marvel works, Shawn Levy is the perfect Marvel director at the moment. We're talking about someone that can run the tightest ship, who can meet budgets, who can get things done on time. Precious. It's funny you don't think he has a vision. I think that's absolutely true, but I don't think that makes him precious about stuff. When I think about similar directorial debuts, I think he's a far better director than Joss Whedon on The Avengers. And when you talk about directorial flourishes, what do you think typifies a Russo movie? Because I think I would put the Russos at the top of the directing pack for what they brought with the Avengers. But I don't know what their flourishes are. I feel that they communicate the Marvel vision and the Marvel machine in its purest form. And I think Shawn Levy does that. Not as well, but holy cow, he's right up there with those guys.
Levy hasn't been on a project with the weight behind it that Infinity War and Endgame had. But I think the comp of the Russos is a good one. They brought the Steadicam feel to the MCU approach to filming action scenes. Kenneth Branagh, Joss Whedon, for different reasons, filmed it more locked off, where the camera's from a distance. Branagh was trying to recreate the Shakespearean stage presentation, and Whedon, because he's a TV director, is used to working with different constraints and limitations, only some of which got brought across to the Avengers. Whereas Levy is a film director and has a bit more of the underlying fitness for the medium and has a higher ceiling, even if we haven't quite seen it yet.
I agree with you with the stylistic flourishes. I think Shawn Levy has had to deal with not the same level of intensity as Endgame, but the most pressure a director has been under in the Marvel studio system since Joss Whedon and the Russos. Because Deadpool and Wolverine was the only Marvel movie out this year. The pressure on that to deliver is phenomenal. I think it was probably more pressure than almost anybody else. Don't get me wrong, the pressure of delivering the first Spider-Man film, yes, John Watts, and he crushed it. But I think when you were the only one for the year, especially when the ones before you have been not some of the greatest, ton of pressure. I think the Russo's strength is creating clarity through the noise, because there is so many balls in the air. Joss Whedon showed us how to juggle multiple chainsaws at a time. The Russos managed to juggle 3 times as many chainsaws as Whedon. Their ability to know in a scene what needs coverage, what needs to be done, the storytelling, you always know where everybody is. In those massive fights in Infinity War and Endgame, my God, it was so generic in Days of Future Past, but in Endgame and Infinity War, you know where everybody is and the story progresses along really well. Shawn Levy, in the quieter scenes, has a similar level of blocking skill that the Russos do. But I think too that he's able to really deliver on the Marvel Studio method almost better than anybody else that I've seen so far. I think that he's the perfect, I'm going to use a word that I've used disparagingly in the past, but I think he's managed to somehow take it up to another level, and that is a journeyman. He's just a consummate professional, and he's not precious about stuff and able to deliver on what the story and what the characters need without him impressing anything over the top. I'd like to see him do more Marvel stuff.
I don't see journeyman as a slur. I don't see that as a disparagement. Not everybody is afforded the opportunity to implement their vision. Some people turn up to do a job, and that job comes with expectations, limitations, and you're already working to somebody else's vision. Whedon had the advantage where they hadn't established the Marvel method, and the Russos had the advantage where they did establish what the Marvel method became, and Levy has to come in after that. I have the opposite opinion, though, in that I think following up some poorly received films with something designed very craftily, carefully, and deliberately to make fans happy is an easier assignment than it is to bring a sense of whimsy and scope to a brand new property like the Eternals.
I'm going to throw that on its head. I think that him managing to thread the needle to create fan service without fan derision has been a masterful balancing act that I think is a lot harder than it seems, because if he'd gone too far, it would have been seen as, oh, look what they're trying to do. They're trying to bring us all back with this absolutely fan service pandering. Nobody said that. And I think that is a tightrope that he managed to walk in his gut and his instinct and whatever Reynolds' instinct and every other studio person involved to find what that tightrope was. But they managed to find it.
I agree they found it, but they didn't find it for everybody. There are plenty of reviews from people who aren't adverse to Marvel or genre pictures who bounced off the film because it was such a collection of references and weren't able to connect with the through line of the emotion of the characters and their journey itself. At least for some of the audience, he tipped over the side a bit, but I'm very hesitant to put that at his feet. That seems very much to me a decision that the whole production made from the moment the script started to take shape. It wasn't an energy that he chose to bring to the project. He chose to bring his energy to the project that was already doing that.
It's interesting because I don't know if it's the script or the direction, but on my first watch, I completely missed most of the character stuff. I didn't understand what Wolverine did. I didn't realize that the most important themes were set up in the Happy Hogan scene, doing things because people need you to do them rather than you needing them, about mattering. All those things are covered up by the endless banter and the jokes and chemistry between Hogan and Deadpool. There is a powerful momentum that he chose to service rather than the actual themes of the story being established. I missed a lot of this on the first watch. It is a film that I enjoyed far more on the second watch, that I was able to completely take in on the third. And for me as a Marvel fan, going back and watching something and getting more out of a film has been very rare. I don't go back to many of the recent movies. So for me, that's a win.
I think we don't go back to the more recent movies, in part because we were so spoilt by that original 23 film run.
What's the 23rd? Where do you draw the line? Endgame?
Up to Endgame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting for those of you out there, Scott and I both do not rate No Way Home very highly. Sorry. I worked on it. I think it's good.
I think we put too much effort into ranking. These things are fluid, and we appreciate them differently over time, and they hit us for different reasons on different cycles through the watch. And the way we've laser focused in on Deadpool and Wolverine has given it a lot more consideration than maybe it deserves. We're spoiled. The MCU completely changed superhero adaptations and superhero cinema, raised the bar in so far that we as fans have lost perspective. Because it was such a cohesive, universally appealing whole, we've lost the patience to go, oh, this wasn't for us. You could be a fan of the X-Men films and never go back to Wolverine Origins and be much happier with your life than if you were the kind of committed person who had to insert Wolverine Origins into their rewatch every cycle. We were spoiled. We had this fantastic thing, and we haven't figured out how to approach media as a whole as a fandom since that moment. I think fandom has fractured.
I don't like normally giving things ratings and numbers, but I do like comparing them to each other. While I objectively call some, like Avengers Endgame and Avengers a 10, and you look down at the bottom of my list and you see something like Thor: The Dark World, I still think that's a 6.5 out of 10. Are they all 6.5 on upwards? Yes, I absolutely think they are. And when you look at the history of movies, to be able to look at one single franchise and go, hey, everything is pretty much above a 6.5 or a 6. If you wanted to be absolutely awful, and you look at something like Captain Marvel or The Marvels, which most people would put at the bottom of their list, I still think they're 6.5, 7 out of 10 movies. I don't particularly love them, but I don't think they're particularly bad either. If you look at those movies and think they're anything lower than that, I think you're spoiled. For me to look at something like Deadpool and Wolverine, have we over-analyzed it? Yes. But on the other hand, I also think that it's been a really fun exercise to review the entire MCU through the lens of this movie, especially when it is tried to engulf the entirety of the Fox universe at the same time. I think has put a lot of meat on its bones.
It was an ambitious meta task the movie set itself, and it largely succeeded. That's a difficult needle to thread, even with an aware fandom. Balancing that and the 4 quarters tentpole requirements of a movie with this kind of budget, absolute achievement of IP management.
How did that finale hit for you, Scott? They're outside. It should be me. No, it's got to be me. It should be me. And then he tricks him and throws him in there. From there onwards, where were you with?
Tears streaming down my face, singing along with Madonna, reaching out between imaginary matter and antimatter poles, absolutely wrapped up in it. Was my first, second, and even third watch. Absolutely along with the journey. The music choice. Mwah. I don't know what Madonna cost, but it was money well spent.
Reynolds said he has had an idea for that song for a very long time. He's been wanting to use it in a variety of sequences. Someone asked him, what would you do if Madonna said no? He goes, I would have just asked her again. I would have just kept asking until she finally agreed. He goes, I didn't have a second choice. That is all I wanted it to be. It was just so much fun. How much did you pop through the glass when he did the Spock moment?
Interesting fact this week. I hope I remember the 4 movies correctly. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Star Trek 3, Ghostbusters and Gremlins, I think were the 4 movies that all released within 3 weeks of each other.
Whoa, what? That is mind-blowing.
Utterly mind-blowing, right? When you hit that sweet spot culturally, which is what the MCU did, you have a lasting impact. People can dismiss superhero movies and superheroes in general and comic books especially, and that's fine. They're allowed to do that. Everybody chooses what they want to consume. But to deny that these things speak to people is naive. This climax spoke to me. The self-sacrifice, tinged with a bit of one-upping, the humor covering the fear, then the sacking up and getting it done. And then the realization that it's not enough, but then your friend turns up. That's what makes it all work. The whole film probably falls apart if that ending isn't as powerful and affecting as it was. And we've spoken middling terms about the skills of Shawn Levy, but my God, he brought that moment to life and made it incredibly powerful. And yeah, hats off to him, hats off to the cast, hats off to Madonna for writing a pretty awesome song like 30 years ago.
Stan's cameo on the side of the bus. Oh, we missed his cameo too. We missed his cameo. Funko Pop that I got to draw for. When Stan Lee died, Bill Maher basically said something disparaging.
but took the occasion of his death to express my dismay at people who in general are stuck in an everlasting childhood.
And when you break any of the things that we enjoy down to their most basic roots, is baseball a guy with a stick hitting an inflated piece of pig leather? No, it's so much more than that. Is football a bunch of guys in padding running after another piece of inflated pigskin? No, it's so much more than that. If you want to be absolutely disparaging to all these things, yes, you can break them down. You can look at the Super Bowl and pretend it's a bunch of man children celebrating something that doesn't mean anything to anybody anywhere else in the entire world. But that's not what it means to those people, and it's not what Marvel Studios and their comic books have meant to us. And I will never cast a stone at anybody else that loves something. I've really gotten into baseball. Still can't get into cricket. Sorry, Australia. Baseball rocks. But when I look at the Marvel Studios films, it moves me.
I read a quote this week. I wish I could attribute it properly. It said, "The golden age of science fiction is 12. It's not the science fiction from the pulps in the 50s. It's not Star Wars and Star Trek from the 70s. It's not the big budget CGI stuff we got in the 90s and 2000s. It's whatever you loved when you were impressionable and open. And that sticks with everybody. I guarantee you that Bill Maher, who is a tiny little hate-filled man in his old age and should no longer be relevant to anybody, the reason he does what he does is because he fell in love with comedy at an impressionable age. And for him not to have the self-awareness that other people love other things for similar reasons and can see more in the material than he can, speaks to his limitations, not the limitations of the genre he thinks he's critiquing.
We are all nerds in whatever we are passionate about. If you can tell me what year everyone was drafted, their jersey number, and what college they played for, you're a football nerd. That is a nerd level of information to know. We can quote comic book debuts and issues, and it's the exact same thing, just a different field. It doesn't matter what you're into. Be a nerd, love it, and have some passion for it, and go out and try and understand somebody else's passion. One of the things that I've really enjoyed about this is watching it again with all this stuff, now being able to fit inside my tiny little brain as I watch the movie. I enjoy it more, and I still get moved at the end. I went back after having these conversations with Scott and watched Deadpool and Wolverine again, and I enjoyed it so much more. If I have one hope that these can extend to you that same extra love, that you can go back to it in some way, if we can create some sort of lube that shines Deadpool and Wolverine up for you so it slides in a little bit easier, I'll take that win.
I'm not sure that gets past the YouTube content standards, Jazz, but good luck.
And here's my other question for you, Scott. Kevin Feige was quoted as saying, he goes, if I had to rate the impact on the MCU, Infinity War and Endgame were a 10. Deadpool and Wolverine is an 8. What the hell could that possibly be?
It was popularly received, which not a lot has been since Endgame. And Endgame was certainly popularly received. You couldn't imagine a better, more enthusiastic response to the end of your 23 film cycle than what they achieved with Endgame. On a more practical level, I don't imagine we find out for 5 or 6 years until the X-Men are established in the MCU and the legacy that these premier mutant characters have left in the franchise.
What would you say as a final wrap-up for the film, Scott?
I think the movie is fun. It's a love letter to fans and fandom. It's a reminder that any movie you enjoy is a movie you enjoy and will live on in you, regardless of what happens with sequels and reboots. I think it's a gentle chastisement of certain entitled parts of fandom that want everything to remain the same, that insist that everything fit into what their view of canon is. It's a reminder that we're better off and we're going to have more fun if we take a bit of a relaxed attitude and allow things to change and to evolve. These characters are not the characters they were in their first appearances. The characters that we say goodbye to. Elektra, for example, was never actually beloved in the movies. In the comics, pretty well regarded, at least the classic appearances, but yeah, in the movies, nobody was in love with that. The fans who were on that journey that the Fox movies went on got something out of being able to say goodbye to that period of time, to reflect to those Fantastic Four films, to that Daredevil movie. The Blade movies were really cool, actually. Maybe we should go back and watch those. That's the desired takeaway. The cynical part of me wants to say it's Disney keeping some films in its library in the perpetually reselling and re-releasing Blu-ray versions of Market. But that's what the company is going to do. The creatives that sat down tried to respect the material while gently tweaking it as well. I'm starting to think that Canadians and Australians have a more similar ethos than I would have given thought originally. And I'm starting to regret some of my anti-Canadian rhetoric that I may have performatively enjoyed during the early cycles of our revisiting Deadpool.
Get my country's name out of your fucking mouth.
Because if you can love something enough to make fun of it, but still keep your love coming across, that's quintessentially Australian. That's quintessentially fandom. That's quintessentially love. I really enjoyed it. And I look forward to not watching it again for 3 to 4 years.
They're gonna make him do this till he's 90.
I want to shoot you my final thoughts and re-rank Deadpool and Wolverine against every other MCU movie, but I also want to know from you, what did you think about what we said about Ryan Reynolds and Shawn Levy? Do you also agree that Bill Maher is entirely irrelevant now? Let me know in the comments below. But first, holy rusted metal Batman. You made it. Deadpool and Wolverine had more parts than most jigsaw puzzles, and you are still here. You did it. I wish I could give you a gold star or an adamantium katana, but the real reward was the friends we made along the way. You and me, maybe even Scott too, if you're not a Canadian. Kidding? Maybe? I mean, I gotta be talking to someone who's also subscribed, right? How can you be here and now still not formally be friends? I'm friend asking you to please subscribe. Put a ring on me and make it formal. If you're somehow here, made it through the hours and hours of MCU love, please show us some love and hit that like button. It's like pouring jet fuel into our X-Jet and it helps get this video to other people who might like it. I'm really proud of these videos. If you want to catch up and chat directly, I'm drawing a free comic called The Last Sun live on twitch.tv/JasonBaddower. Come hang out and distract me while I draw. You can read The Last Sun for free at jasonbaddower.com. If you want to read the best thing I've ever drawn, please check out Joker Harley Criminal Sanity, a forensically real take on the Joker and Harley Quinn. It's on the black label from DC Comics. You can grab it on Amazon, but if you have a local comic shop, please see if they have it on the shelves, and if they don't, please consider ordering it through them. It'll take a little longer, but you'll be supporting a small business, and these comic shops are the lifeblood of the comic book industry. So let's do my final thoughts on Deadpool and Wolverine. I gotta say, my impression of it has changed a fair bit. First, I've grown a pretty big gripe that grows every time I rewatch this movie. First, some context. In Australia, we love to swear. The C-bomb is a term of endearment. I ran a couple of gyms and I'd have girls from private schools come in and see each other and be like, hey, how you doing, you dirty ass? And the other would be like, pretty good, you dumb C-bomb. But obviously they said the actual words. Everyone just swears in Australia. I worked shoulder to shoulder with tradies for a year and laughed my butt off at their language. And while I keep these videos pretty PG, if you catch me IRL, my line in the sand for swearing is way further than you would ever expect it to be. Just keep going. So when I tell you that Deadpool and Wolverine has excessive swearing, you know I'm not pearl clutching. And here's why. So after my business partners and I worked with the tradies for a year, we had a swear jar to stop ourselves swearing. And the problem was, we now have to articulate to each other our issues with the same level of emphasis without swearing. And you know what happened? We ended up offending each other way more by not swearing. And this happens to the dialogue in this movie. It loses its emotion from all the swearing. Wolverine, especially in this movie, just swears all the time. And it takes away from the times that he's using bad language to genuinely emphasize his feelings. 40% of it is totally unnecessary. And what we end up with is
60% of the time, it works every time.
Now, I mentioned before that I showed Deadpool and Wolverine to my kids. My daughter Thea has now watched it more than me, and she even asked me to buy her this Deadpool and Wolverine necklace, and she gave the Deadpool half to her BFF. I'm still waiting for a phone call from that kid's parents. But all the things that I didn't like or understand in Deadpool and Wolverine, like Dogpool and Bye Bye Bye, she loves. In fact, she even found a 10-hour remix of Bye Bye Bye, and I think I've listened to that thing all the way through at least twice. So different strokes for different folks. I retract my objections, Your Honor. And lastly, let's re-tier this movie. Way back in our spoiler-free review, Scott and I ranked Deadpool and Wolverine against every other MCU movie we'd reviewed. For me, I put it right in the middle of the pack. I want to revise my ranking. I want to up its rating. I'm going to pop it exactly where Scott did, at 8th place. What makes Deadpool and Wolverine so great is that it is one of the few Marvel movies which gets better on the rewatch. While I would prefer to rewatch it over Infinity War because it is more fun, it's not a better film than Infinity War. And while I love Ragnarok, I'd rewatch Deadpool and Wolverine over Ragnarok because of the real emotional beats at the end of this movie.
But you put a Deadpool and a Wolverine together? Make them hold hands while listening to Madonna?
The main problem with Deadpool and Wolverine is that all of its important emotional themes that are set up in the integral scene with Happy are steamrolled by all the jokes, and then Deadpool's entire motivation and friendship is never established in the party scene. But when I watch it all over again, all that stuff lands. You know, seriously, raise a glass to Shawn Levy, Ryan Reynolds, and Hugh Jackman and the rest of the crew. Congrats. Oh wait, this is from last night. That's disgusting. So what's next for the Scott and Chase Not So Cinematic Universe? Deadpool 2, my friends. We recorded Deadpool 2, but I didn't get time to edit it in time for Deadpool and Wolverine. But hey, 7 out of 8 ain't bad for a newbie channel. I'm going to lead that off with Scott's and my insight into Marvel's casting method. We'll see you then. Hit the subscribe and the notification bell so you know when it's live. In the meantime, there's now over 30 videos on the channel, and I am really proud of all of them. Although watch the earlier ones at 1.25 speed, because they're a little slow for my Fortnite and TikTok starved attention span. Thank you again so much. Take care of others if you can. I love you. Be kind to a Canadian. There are 2 reasons why me, a comic book writer and artist, has partnered with Notes and Clips, a stationery company. 1, they make great stuff. And 2, Rob, the panel's Destiny 2 guru, is the co-founder and fulfillment officer for Notes and Clips. So if you're looking for a present for yourself or for someone else that is actually made by an honest-to-traveler Destiny 2 gamer, then look no further than Notes and Clips, my fellow guardian. Notes and Clips are a small family fire team designing, selecting, sourcing, and most importantly, personally handcrafting fantastic stationery, organizational stickers, and pens. Notes and Clips is just the perfect present for anyone you know, like buying someone an exotic engram, IRL. Let me show you their awesome stuff. You've got these awesome stickers that are so much fun for someone younger, while these stickers are perfect for someone just trying to survive being an adult, or maybe who's getting married. I honestly believe that all big events should be planned for with these planner journals and these stickers. That way you'll not only have the amazing memory of the event, but you'll have a beautiful journey to remember it by. And these stationery boxes are perfect for birthdays, end of year holidays, or just plain saying thank you on Mother's Day, Father's Day, or heck, even for that fire team leader that watched you flail against a wall for 40 minutes on Whisper of the Worm. Thank you, Rob. Notes and Clips have almost 30,000 missions under their belt and around 6,000 reviews that would make even Cade 6 blush. Rob will get your order and will personally transmit it to you. How soon depends on what you ordered and where it's going. Here's the breakdown from this side. Buy someone you know something nice and know that you're supporting a fellow Destiny 2 player and their family at the same time. I don't care how many times Rob holds me through Volta Glass trying to get me Vex Mythoclast. I still don't have it, Rob. I am an artist, and I have a rep, and I'll put it all on the line and say the quality is so flat out incredible that Ada's Loom will be jealous. Meanwhile, the price is quite frankly a steal. And if you use the code BADOWER25, you'll get the largest current site-wide discount. That is Rob's and my shout out to a fellow guardian. Notes and Clips are your go-to gamer present for non-gamers, like a stealth gamer present. But you'll know, I'll know, but they won't. Thank you, Rob, and Notes and Clips for all your support. What are you drinking, Scott?
There is no hype, only Zool. As we're still stuck on Deadpool, I chose a beer that is itself a tired reference to an old movie.
But not a tired movie. That original Ghostbusters is absolute gold.
You let this country down every time you appear on camera.